you would, turn in your Bibles to the book of Judges, chapter 1. Judges, chapter 1. If you have a marker, I ask you to go ahead and mark that. We'll be going back and forth to Judges. We'll be a little bit in Joshua and some surrounding passages. But Judges, chapter 1. Last week we started a study of the Judges, some of the lessons we can learn. And started off with just the basic fact that you can learn a lot from the Judges just from the cycle that they've went into. And we as people tend to go into the same cycles where that we are at peace because we're at peace with God and we're doing the things of God, and then we fall. We falter, maybe fall by the wayside and start doing things, not necessarily seeking out after idolatrous worship as it would be defined in the Old Testament, of worship of sticks and stones and things like that, but worship of self most of the time. And we fall, and then of course it's time to repent when God does not have his blessings on us and deliver he delivers us if we repent. So a lot we can learn from there. I want to see if we can learn some things from the individual judges. I've never taught a lesson on Othniel. Othniel, not a whole lot written about him. It'd be better than teaching about Jair or Shamgar, which are very short. But nevertheless, we have to go back between Judges and Joshua to learn the story of Othniel. And there's very similar stories told in both, if not exactly the same. But nevertheless, I think there's a lot of things we can learn from there. The first thing I want to do is go and read Judges chapter 1. And we're going to be about verse 16, I'd say. Well, let me back up a little bit. How about we back up to verse 12. Then Caleb said, "Whoever attacks Kirjath-Sepher and takes it, to him I will give my daughter Achsah as wife." And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it. So he gave him his daughter, Achsah, as wife. Now it happened, when she came to him, that she urged him to ask her father for a field. And she dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, "What do you wish?" So she said to him, "Give me a blessing. Since you have given me land in the south, give me also springs of water." And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. The first thing I want to bring out about these particular people, most notably Othniel, the lesson is going to be on Othniel and his wife Achsah. Othniel was the father of Caleb, or Othniel was the Jephunneh was the father of Caleb. And the first part of the lesson is maybe going to center around him a little bit, but it's mostly talking about this idea of a family legacy, creating a family legacy. And I'm not talking about something shallow, okay? I'm not talking about money put away or the idea that all our family drives Chevy or drives Ford or some silly thing like that, or what team we root for. No, a family legacy is my family. It's like Joshua 24:15. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That is the kind of legacy that I'm talking about. And Jephunneh apparently was one who had that. As I said, he's the father of Caleb, and it is uncertain whether Othniel was Caleb's younger brother or whether he was his nephew. When you read that, it could really go either way. And what I've studied, even in the Hebrew, it can go either way. Either Othniel can be Caleb's younger brother, or Kenaz, Othniel's father, could be Caleb's younger brother. We're not really sure which. I would take the latter, that Othniel would be Caleb's nephew rather than his direct younger brother. Nevertheless, they are in the same family, right? Jephunneh would be Caleb's father and Othniel's grandfather. So they're both in the same family. And the apple did not fall far from the tree. That's very important that we realize as we study through here. We know of Caleb's reputation and his stand for God, and that it was just unwavering. We think about him mostly in the incidents of the spies, don't we? Over in the 14th chapter or 13th chapter of the book of Numbers, if you want to go ahead and turn there, we'll read a few verses from there. Numbers chapter 13. when the children of Israel came out of Egypt, and for about a year built the tabernacle and all of those things. And then the second month of the second year they set out and they make their way up and are ready to go into the land and come up with this idea, let's send spies into the land. Caleb is one of them. Joshua is another. They're all named for us. And they go into the land and they see that this is incredible, the blessings that are on this land. Remember, 2 men came back with a cluster of grapes between them, and they see all these blessings in the land, but 10 of them only see the bad parts. The parts where it's going to be really hard, right? It's going to be really difficult to do. I can remember being a little bit that way moving up here. And if you've ever moved a great distance, some of us have. I think Raspberry's moved a great distance. Danny's moved a great distance, maybe a couple of times. When you leave home, place you've lived for a long time, the Hudsons here have moved. That's a big deal when you start doing that. And you can kind of see the blessings of going where you're going, but then you're like, man, it's going to be hard. I don't want to move, right? You got to get rid of 80% of your stuff because we like to save up, hoard a bunch of stuff, I guess, over the years. But nevertheless, back to the point. I want to point out some things about Caleb in this incident of the spies. In Numbers 13 and verse 30, it says, "Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, 'Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it.'" What an attitude that this guy has. At this time, he's 40 years old, and we're going to learn that later. He's looking back, and he's telling Joshua, hey, give me my land. Back at this time, I was 40 years old. And so he's not a young pup when the idea of the spies comes around. Numbers chapter 14, as they continue this discourse, and starting in verse 6, it says, "But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes, and they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, 'The land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear.'" Once again, he's showing his colors. This is someone who's so on fire for God that even in the face of looking like there's no way we could stand up against these people and drive them out of their land, human knowledge says not going to happen. Faith says something different. He says, "Oh, we're well able to do it. They're like bread." What do you do with bread? Well, you eat it, right? And it's. I wish bread would fight me back sometimes. But it doesn't, right? We just eat that stuff right up. Over in Numbers chapter 14, now skip to verse 24. And notice what it says about Caleb here. It says, "But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him, and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it." At this point, he's already made the curse. There's going to be 40 years they're going to have to wander in the wilderness. Caleb is already 40. At this point, really, the time they're going to wander in the wilderness is going to be about 38 years, because they've already been gone from Egypt a little over a year. 38 more years. When they come into the land, when they cross that Jordan, he's going to be 78 or 79 years old. By the time he gets his portion of his land, he's going to be 85. And that which brings us to the next part of this about Caleb. He shows that he's unwavering for God in the conquest as well. Let's turn to Joshua chapter 14 now. Joshua chapter 14. And we'll see someone who still has that great faith. Great faith. We are well able to overcome them. They're bread before us. Now he comes into there. They're into the midst of the land. Each one is being given their portion, and they can choose whether to take it, whether to take certain parts, Caleb chooses a difficult portion to take, right? He chooses a difficult portion to take. Let's start Joshua chapter 14 and verse 6. And remember, he's 85 years old. Joshua 14, starting in verse 6. Then the children of Judah came to Joshua in Gilgal. And Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said to him, You know the word which the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought back word to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed the Lord my God. So Moses swore on that day, saying, Surely the land where your foot has trodden shall be your inheritance and your children's forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, ever since the Lord spoke this word to Moses while Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now here I am this day, 85 years old, and yet I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me. Just as my strength was then, so now my strength for war, both for going out and for coming in. Now, therefore, give me this mountain, of which the Lord spoke in that day. For you have heard in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fortified. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord has said. What about those Anakim? Look at Deuteronomy chapter 2. Deuteronomy, the 2nd chapter. And verse 11, just to give us a little bit of an idea of who these people were, Deuteronomy 2 and verse 11 says, they were also regarded as giants, like the Anakim, but the Moabites called them Emim. Caleb, at 85 years old, is choosing a difficult plot of ground where giants dwell and saying, Give it to me. I want it. I'm going to take it. I'm still as strong as I ever was. Why was he still as strong at 85 as he was at 40? Because his strength was in God. It was not in himself. It was not in himself. Incredible. And not only that, but he was successful as well. He was successful in what he did. Look at Joshua 14. Now we're starting verse 13. Verse 13. And Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb the son of Jephunneh as an inheritance. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite to this day, because he wholly followed the Lord God of Israel. This was the type of family that Othniel came from, and that's the subject of our talk today. This was where he hailed from. So let's get a little bit to Othniel. I keep going too far with my stuff. Of course, Othniel was Jephunneh's grandson. Othniel was right there alongside Caleb's side in the conquest. He didn't go very far. We don't have a lot written about him at the time. But look at Joshua chapter 15. And we're going to read starting in verse 13. Joshua 15, verse 13. Now to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he gave a share among the children of Judah, according to the commandment of the Lord to Joshua, namely Kirjath Arba, which is Hebron. Arba was the father of Anak. Caleb drove out the 3 sons of Anak from there, Shishai, Ahiman, and Talmai, the children of Anak. Then he went up from there to the inhabitants of Debir. Formerly the name of Debir was Kirjath-Sepher. And Caleb said, He who attacks Kirjath-Sepher and takes it, to him I will give Achsah my daughter as wife. So Othniel the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, took it, and he gave him Achsah his daughter as a wife. So what did he do? He's right there at his side during the judges, or during the conquest of the land, rather. And later, when they do come into the land, and a generation arises that doesn't know God, and by this time Othniel is going to be getting up there in age, he answers the call against a man named Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. who is an instrument of God. We would call him God's hammer coming against the people because of their unfaithfulness. Well, he chooses judges, as he does during this period of the judges, and goes against this very, very wicked king. So he answered the call when foreign oppression came. Look at Judges chapter 3. Judges chapter 3. And we'll read starting in verse 7. Judges 3, starting in verse 7. So the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God, and served the Baals and Asherahs. Therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold him into the hand of Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel served Cushan-Rishathaim 8 years. When the children of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the children of Israel, who delivered them, Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he judged Israel. He went out to war, and the Lord delivered Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand, and his hand prevailed over Cushan-Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. Notice some things about this. Notice that Othniel didn't run away when it was his time, when God calls him. He's ready. Notice that he didn't go into hiding. He didn't say, find someone else. I'm not ready for that. No, he was ready to go to work. He didn't even say, give me a sign for surety that you're going to give the victory into my hand. Remember, Gideon's going to do that in the future. And he's not going to just need one sign. He's going to need about 4 signs that God's going to deliver them into his hand. But not Othniel. He's ready for the task, and he does it well. Which brings up the question, are we ready for the Lord's use? Look at Isaiah, or listen to this quote from Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 8. Isaiah 6 and verse 8. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said, here am I, send me. There's work to be done while we're in this world. Work for the Lord. Whether that's work of service for our brethren, work of service for those that are lost to bring them to Christ, or evangelistic work, whatever it may be, we need to be echoing those sentiments. Here am I. Send me. I want to do it. I want to be the one to go. So are we preparing ourselves? Are we preparing our young ones for that? Are we preparing the little ones? We need to try to be like Jephunneh in that way. For some reason, Jephunneh produced a son who, when push came to shove, he says, we're able to go and take this land. I don't know if he gets that straight from Jephunneh. Maybe Jephunneh at that time was dead, and maybe it is that he was kicking up some dust to it, and it just doesn't record it for us. We're not really sure. But he produced a son and a grandson who are ready to go to the work and do it in an unwavering manner. We need to be like that. If you want grown children who act like Caleb and Othniel, you've got to prepare them during all of their youth. Give them an example of what a godly person should be like. Now, in the time we got left, I want to look at Asa. We have to hold some of this over to tonight. Hopefully not. But Asa, you may say, well, not much written there. She's a godly wife. I want to just go through some of these things rather quickly. Notice about Asa. She's literally a prize to be won. This wife of Othniel. Literally a prize to be won. Going back to the book of Joshua, chapter 15. As I said, this is repeated in the book of the Judges as well. It's repeated in the book of the Judges as well. In chapter 1 of the Judges. But I'm going to be reading from Joshua 15. If my Bible will actually let me turn there. Chapter 15, verse 16 and 17. Caleb said, he who attacks Kirjath-Sepher and takes it, to him I will give Asa, my daughter, as wife. So Othniel, son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, took it, and he gave him Asa, his daughter, as wife. Now, was the land that great? Well, it appears maybe it's not necessarily that the land was that great. Why do I say that? Well, because Asa is going to say, ask him for a field. And when he gives him another field, she says, give me springs of water. I mean, come on. Maybe the field wasn't so great. Maybe it was Asa that was great. You take this place, and I'll give you my daughter Asa as wife. She was literally a prize to be won. Compare Othniel here to Samson. Othniel chose to win his bride. Samson treated women as things to be used and things to be discarded, didn't he? We'll be learning more about him a little bit later. This whole situation reminds us of Proverbs 31 and verse 10. Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. Othniel knew that. Her reputation probably preceded her. I don't want to say proceed. There's a lesson here for both men and women in Asa. For women, there's a lesson about what it means to be a prize. Right? You can't be a prize just by saying, I'm a prize. No, it takes work. And it's the same way with men. You can't be a prize by just saying that you are. It takes a lot more than that. For men, there's a lesson about choosing a woman who is a prize and being a man worthy of it. It takes preparation and it takes work. Now, we may not like this one a lot of times, men. Asa encouraged Othniel to succeed. She encouraged him to succeed. In addition to their divine allotment that they got, Asa encouraged her husband to ask Caleb for a field. They already got an allotment. Ask him for a field too. Judges 1 and verse 14. Now it happened when she came to him, she urged him to ask her father for a field. Why? Why would she do that? Well, she wanted her family to have an extra portion in the promised land. And sometimes we look at that and say, greedy, greedy. No, there's nothing negative said about that here. Nothing negative at all. She wanted her family to have something more. Two of the women associated with Samson, when we look at him, display the opposite desire for the man in their life. Not to succeed, right? Samson's first wife sought after whatever it was that would cause him to lose his bet, right? And she sells him out. Delilah, of course, cut off all his hair and had him enslaved. They don't want what's best. But Asa, she encouraged her husband to excel by attaining a greater portion of land than the average Israelite. Women, wives, encourage excellence and success in your husband. Husbands, take the advice. Take the help. You know what? And women, of course, need to do that within the confines of 1 Peter chapter 3 and 1 through 6. But sometimes the wife knows more about what her husband is capable of than he does. And that's a great wife. When you've reached about that point where you think, and I'm about the top of my rope, and she says, you know, you need to do this. The tendency is to lash out. Don't do that. She wants what's best for you because she wants what's best for her family as well. So think about those things. Moving on, she was also a diligent worker and a wise manager of her home. Othniel, of course, had asked for and he had received an extra piece of land, and Asa knew what was needed even further than that. She approaches Caleb, that's her father. You've given me a piece of the land in the south. The Hebrew word is in the Negev. It wasn't really in the Negev. The Negev is a desert. She's kind of playing coy with him. You've given me a piece of desert land. I can't really do much with it. How about you give me some springs of water? Which doesn't mean that Caleb can make springs come up out of the ground. It's either a well or some sort of a pool that he was going to have to dig. He didn't only give her springs of water. He gave her one in the upper field, one in the lower field. An incredible blessing. An incredible blessing that she had through that. She asked for springs of water to water the land. It was what was needed for the land to supply the needs of her own household. And she was blessed with those springs or pools for holding water. Now, what is that reminiscent of? I just want to read this. And she dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Give me a blessing. Since you have given me land in the south, give me also springs of water." And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. Who's it reminiscent of? Well, it's reminiscent of a couple of people that I can think of. Of course, it's reminiscent of Abigail. 1 Samuel chapter 25. If you want to turn there, we'll read a couple of things about Abigail. Chapter 25 and verse 3 says this about her. One of them is important and one of them is not as important. One of them gets the attention, the other gets the heart. It says the name of his wife, speaking of Nabal, was Abigail. She was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance. Beautiful appearance, it gets the attention. But good understanding. Well, if you get a wife with good understanding, you've got a prize, a real prize. Verse 14, same chapter. She saved her house, of course, here. Read verse 14 through 35. I'm not going to read that right now. You well know this story here. She saved her house from certain death by being of good understanding, as well as being a woman of action. David was going to come and he was going to kill every male in the house. Now, if he had done that, where would she be? She wouldn't be in very good shape. She understood that. Even though her husband was a knucklehead, she went and did the things she needed to do for the house. It also reminds us, of course, of the worthy woman. Proverbs 31, verse 11 and verse 12. Go ahead and turn to Proverbs 31. Verse 11 and verse 12. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier. She knows what you're capable of, sometimes, usually, more than you do. Does your heart safely trust her? If it does, you will have no lack of gain. You will be blessed. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. Verse 21, she is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her house is clothed with scarlet. I mean, it's not just enough that they're wearing warm clothes. She laughs at the winter, some versions say. They have warm clothes. But they're not just warm clothes. They're warm and in style. They're clothed in scarlet. Everybody didn't wear scarlet, but hers does. She takes special pride in that. Verse 23, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. You think that's all because of him? Well, if it was all because of him, it wouldn't be mentioned in this passage. Verse 25, strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Asa, an incredible woman with very little said about her. But when you start paying attention, she knows what she's doing. She wants all these things. So, start your own legacy. Make your family's relationship with God a top priority. Be an example to them of how they should walk and live. Train the young people. Encourage them as they grow. If you are a man, be a man of action. One who is steadfast and pure of heart. Be proactive in spiritual areas of your life. Guard yourself. Guard your homes. Be one who is proactive in spiritual training, proactive in spiritual teaching of your children and just those in your house. If you're a woman, desire to be like Asa, like Abigail, like the worthy woman in Proverbs 31. Be a prize. Don't just say you are a prize, be a prize. Work on becoming a woman of God. Be a hard worker. Be one with foresight for your home. Encourage excellence in your husbands. Help him achieve great things spiritually. Help him achieve great things in whatever field he's in secularly. And husbands, Listen to their advice. Safely trust her. Think about these things as you go about your day. Go ahead and get your songbooks out. Turn